I'm Lieutenant Curtis Whipple from the Medford Police Department.
And I'm Mike Boudreau with Medford Police.
Mike, what do you think we should do if you find a suspicious subject, say down at Hawthorne Park?
Well, first of all, it's going to be certainly hard to try and determine what a suspicious person is or looks like. And oftentimes we encourage you to just simply trust your gut. You're going to know it when you see it, but it is oftentimes hard to describe what is suspicious.
Well, what should you do if you come across a suspicious person?
You're going to want to make efforts to make sure that you're going to be safe. Typically what we see is people that see suspicious behavior but they don't take action and they either wind up getting themselves involved in a bad situation when they could have gotten out of it, or they don't call police soon enough. So if it rises to the level you think you should call the police, absolutely do. As police, we would rather check out suspicious persons beforehand and before anything occurs illegal than to try and figure out a case after something happens to somebody.
Absolutely. If you think something's suspicious, the best thing to do would be call the police. We would come to the area, make contact with you, make contact with the suspicious person, and see if we can find out why that is. Some of the things that you might think are suspicious if you're down at Hawthorne Park and you see someone who's, let's say, dressed inappropriate for the weather, and they may be sweating profusely and have a heavy coat on, and you may be wondering why. There's no sense in contacting them. They may have a mental health disorder. Best thing to do is give us a call and we'll see if we can just find out what's going on and what we can do to help them.
Exactly. And in the meantime, while you're waiting for the police, or if you choose not to call the police, you certainly want to make efforts to take actions to make sure that you're safe. Lock doors, get to a safe environment, turn on lights, just make sure that you yourself don't become a potential target for this person.
And the other thing you can do is just make sure you know what they're wearing, whether they're male, female, any type of clothing description, any other physical indicators that will help the police find them at a later date, or if they happen to leave the area, to find them as they're leaving. It'll help us to locate them, give them any help they need, and help resolve the situation.
All right, and I think, again, just to clarify or to wrap up, again, trust your gut and don't hesitate to call us. In this section, I want to talk to you about crime scenes. Now, every crime scene tells a story. The criminal could be organized or disorganized, could be looking for something specifically, or just randomly looking around, and can tell us a lot about the scene. So what you need to remember is, do not contaminate the crime scene. Just try and stay out of as much as you can. What we find is that people often try and enter the crime scene really to look around at what could be missing, or even try and help us out. But it doesn't help because it can contaminate the fingerprints or even potential DNA evidence. After the police are done with the crime scene, then they're actually going to have you come in and take a look around and point out exactly what is missing or moved that could help process the evidence. But it's important that you just simply stay out until the police are done processing.
If someone is carrying either a pistol or a rifle openly in the state of Oregon, it is not necessarily illegal. The Constitution gives us the Second Amendment right to freely carry a firearm, and Oregon is an open carry state. We've had several people involved in open carry at not only Hawthorne Park but other parks in the area, and that is perfectly legal for them to do. However, just because it's legal doesn't mean that times it's not going to be illegal for them to carry either.
If you do see somebody that's armed with a gun and you think they're going to commit any type of criminal act or act of violence, stating the obvious here, but you're going to want to call 911 right away and do your best not to put yourself in harm's way or yourself in the situation. So the best thing that you can do is, again, call 911 and just try and distance yourself as much from the situation, and again, be prepared to provide a good description to the dispatcher.
If you do happen to be confronted by an individual who has a firearm, and they're asking you some questions about, what are you looking at, why are you looking at my gun, The most important thing for you to do is just not to panic about it. At that point in time, your head is the best tool that we have, and you need to talk to this individual, maybe try to calm them down, quell some of their fears that you're going to call the police, let them walk away, and then when they do, make sure you do give us a call.
Absolutely, yeah. Only call 911 if it is safe to do so. And yeah, if you are confronted by somebody that's armed, you're going to want to do exactly as they say and try not to escalate the situation. In this section, we're going to be talking about providing information to dispatch, whether you're calling 911 or calling a non-emergency line. One thing you need to realize is kind of the process. When you call, you're going to be talking to a dispatcher who's going to be inputting the information that you're telling them into a computer in front of them. So they're going to be asking a lot of questions, but they may not actually leave the conversation with you to then dispatch the units. Another person will do that. So just continue to provide that information, and another person will actually dispatch the officers. So sometimes that creates confusion for the people that are calling when they're providing the information and then they don't see the person actually dispatching the police. But that's why. It helps on the way, but it may not sound like it.
911, what is the address of your emergency? What is the address of your emergency?
They enter it in the computer, they ship it over to another person. So they're going to ask you some things about any weapons that you may have saw on the individual you're calling about, or even weapons you may have on yourself. The important thing about this is to make sure you stay on the line with the dispatcher, answers the questions they have. They're typing into the computer as fast as they can as they're getting that information. That's going to another person who's actually dispatching either the police, the fire department, or the ambulance to the scene to help with the emergency.
They're also going to ask you questions like direction of travel, obviously the location, the street address, the street name, and so just make sure you have that stuff available if you can before you call, so you know where you're at, where the incident's occurring, and just to help officers try and locate it.
Yeah, and kind of the final thing is in a large incident, you may have lots of people calling in. Dispatch may be getting the information they can from you and may have more telephone lines ringing that they need to get to. So don't be upset if they make that as quick as they can to get all that information out.
In this section, we're going to talk about what to do during a robbery. Number one is to stay calm, and I understand that's much easier said than done, but do not make any sudden movements. Do exactly what you're told and do not resist. Do not try to be a hero. If you have to move or you have to reach for something, make sure you tell the robber what you're doing. Try to get a good look at him if you can, because you're going to be asked to describe him in detail later. Don't get caught up on glasses or other things that could potentially be changed about him, such as a beard. After the suspect leaves, try not to touch anything. The police are going to be very interested in potential fingerprints and DNA. You're going to want to call 911 immediately after the suspect leaves so the police can potentially catch him leaving the area. Police will ask you when they arrive, they're going to ask you to step out of the business. They will not come in. You may be upset, you may be angry, you may be scared after a robbery has occurred, and this is normal behavior. It's a very traumatizing event. As a general rule, police encourage victims to be very compliant with a robber. However, if you feel you're getting involved in a situation where you could be seriously injured or hurt, we do recommend you take action. For example, if you're being escorted to a potential back room where you could be further hurt, it's your decision at that time if you want to try and make an effort to escape. There are certain things you could do to your facility to try and deter a robbery altogether. Try not to cover up the windows. Allowing people to see inside is actually a deterrent to a robbery. Try not to keep a lot of cash on hand to make it not worth the robber's while. The police highly recommend businesses to install security cameras and to keep them at eye level. All too often we see the video cameras mounted way too far up in the air, which do not provide clear detail of the suspect's face, and we cannot make an identification at a later date. In this section, we're going to talk about vandalism or gang tagging and graffiti. I think the main thing that you're going to need to know in this section is that gangs will often tag several areas of town, and it's best just to get rid of it as soon as you can, because actually the gang members will claim that area as their own territory. So you don't have much to fear in removing the gang tagging. That's what we do basically all the time. But the police department will want to document it first, but as soon as it's documented, it will need to be removed.
Yeah, we actually, Metro PD does have a eradication program for any graffiti, and it's a large trailer that we have filled with paint. We've got a CSO that goes out and works with the juvenile department. Oftentimes, juveniles who are on probation will be required to go out with the CSO and to remove the graffiti that either they or someone else has tagged someplace. This is huge for especially the Bear Creek Greenway. We've got days where they're out there for hours on end removing graffiti from bridges, from buildings, and it's just a great program we have.
Yeah, and like I said, if it's not getting rid of, it's actually proven that it will actually invite more criminal activity. So it's called the broken windows theory. So it's best just to try and clean it up as quickly as you can. And of course, we're going to want to know about it, because especially if it's gang related. And as far as what's gang related and what's not gang related, it's sometimes very difficult to tell. But we're usually able to tell that rather quickly.
Yeah, and it is important you call the police department. What we will do is go out and actually take a photograph of the graffiti before we actually remove it. And we've had some great cases of being able to identify who the actual graffiti artist is and being able to charge them with some significant crimes. Yeah,
and we also have several security camera options available to us at the Metro Police Department, some very covert cameras and graffiti cameras that we could put up at a particular location if it's repeated graffiti. But if it's on public property, it's up to the city to remove. If it's on private property, it's up to the homeowner or the property owner to remove or face a fine.
What we want to talk about now is active shooter. An active shooter in police terms is probably the worst of the worst. It's something that it does happen. However, in any single community, it's going to be a very rare event. This is something that police train for, but in most police officers' career, they'll never see it happen. What an active shooter is an individual who is armed with a weapon, either a rifle or a pistol, who's actually going through a building, searching for individuals to shoot.
Exactly. It's when they are actively shooting or killing people and they have access to additional people, whether it's in a school, that's oftentimes what most people associate this with, or a mall, or even outdoor scenes can certainly potentially be active shooter scenes. When you call 911, just be advised, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of folks calling 911, they will be inundated, but they're going to be looking for mainly the location of the shooter, because it's always changing, because we're talking about somebody who is moving and shooting people. So location of the shooter, how many, and then a description of what the shooter looks like. It sounds rather obvious, you either run or hide, but do the best you can to get out of the situation, because once the police get there, we are going to be actively seeking out the threat, the suspect, to try and eliminate him, and we will actually bypass injured parties to stop the threat immediately. And just so you know, that's our general response. After the suspect, the threat has been eliminated, we'll go back and render aid. So that's just kind of the general scenario on how we train for active shooter scenarios, and maybe things that you could think about as well.
In this section, we're going to be talking about a lockdown. A lockdown is an emergency protocol to prevent people from either entering or leaving a facility. If you are called by either dispatch or a police officer, there's some very important things you need to do. First of all, you need to make sure you lock all the exterior doors to the facility. In addition, stay away from all the exterior windows and go towards the interior of the building. I understand in circumstances such as this, curiosity is a big thing. You want to know why the police are there and what's going on. And there may be several reasons for that. Police in the area may be serving a high-risk search warrant. There may be an armed suspect in the area that they are looking for. Because of those reasons, it's important that you stay inside, and once it is clear, the police will notify you that you can exit.
All right, in this section we're going to talk about disruptive behavior. Don't want to confuse this with actually the people that are protesting a certain cause or the right to assemble. We've seen that a lot lately when they often congregate in parks where they will do some type of a protest or Occupy event. Oftentimes those are legal and protected speech. So we just want to clarify that point of it, and then maybe discuss further what is illegal disruptive behavior.
Basically, when you get into the illegalities of it, you're looking at individuals who are maybe fighting or preparing to fight. They're yelling at each other. They're causing a disturbance where three or more people are concerned or worried about what they're going to do. Individuals who are either stopping vehicular traffic or stopping any type of pedestrian traffic. Again, something else that's criminal and we can definitely put an end to. And those are the things that we want to know about and you should call the police about.
In addition to that, if they are starting to damage property, that's obviously a situation that we're going to need to be notified of. So if you see any of that illegal disruptive behavior, certainly feel free to call the police immediately. In this section, we're going to talk about missing children and found children. Let's first talk about missing children. If someone reports to you a missing child, this could potentially be an abduction situation, or it could simply be a child that had wandered away. Either way, it's a serious incident and time is of the essence, so please call the police immediately, especially if the child is under 10 years old. Be aware that the police are going to want to have the premises checked thoroughly, because oftentimes a child is actually found hiding somewhere on the premises. You're also going to want to make sure that all surveillance video is going to be retained, that is going to be on site if there's any. The police may activate what's called a child is missing program, and that is basically a reverse 911 where dispatch will call every resident in a certain block area where the child was last seen. The other options the police have will be Amber Alert, and this is more of a statewide broadcast system to various radio stations, TV stations, and interstate signs and other law enforcement agencies, but this should be used more for an actual stranger abduction. Now let's talk about found child. If a child is turned over to you that has been found and the parents are not able to be located, you want to make sure that the child is safe. Be wary about turning over the child to anyone unless you are sure it's going to be the parent or the guardian. It's best to also call the police in this situation too, because you really don't know what could be going on behind the scenes. If you feel there is a neglect issue going on, you could also notify DHS or the police. In this section, we're going to talk about personal safety. And in general terms, we want to encourage you to not put yourself in a bad situation. And that usually just is as simple as being aware of your surroundings, not being out late at night by yourself. It's best if you could always be in pairs. Have somebody with you if you're a little unsure about the situation.
Yeah, you also want to make sure you know what your mindset is. I mean, if something is going to happen, you want to make sure that you're aware of what you're going to do if it does happen. By keeping yourself aware of your surroundings, you'll be able to do that. If you're, let's say, walking through Hawthorne Park and you happen to get to a place that's not as well lit, and you hear somebody or see somebody coming towards you, you've got a way that you can move to get away from them and go towards a more well-lit area. It'd be an important part of the personal safety piece of it.
That's something that it's best if you think about ahead of time and maybe have a plan. So if something does happen, you're not going to be paralyzed in fear. And that's what we see. People that don't think about it, something happens and then they just lock up. There's also personal defense weapons that some people carry, like pepper spray, that is relatively safe, that we see a lot of people carry to help protect themselves. A whistle, some things like that you can maybe think about ahead of time.
Absolutely, and make sure that if you are going to get involved in a confrontation, you know what your abilities are. I think it's always best to avoid that confrontation and to leave if you can. But if that's not a possibility for you, make sure you know what your limitations are.
Sounds good. Yeah, just in closing, just try not to put yourself in a bad situation. All too often we see victims of crime get themselves in a really bad scenario when they could have, had they recognized it earlier, they could have avoided the whole thing.